On the far side of the Sea of Galilee, a man lived in hell on earth. Day and night he wandered among the tombs, screaming, bleeding, and breaking every chain that others tried to bind him with. People feared him. Society forgot him. Evil spirits controlled him in ways no one could understand or stop. Until Jesus came. What happened next wasn't just a miracle. It was a battle between heaven's power and hell's desperate resistance. A legion of demons, a herd of pigs, a man set free, and a town gripped by fear. This is one of the Bible's most shocking yet powerful stories. It shows us both evil's desperation and Christ's complete authority. Today, we're going to study this incredible event from Mark chapter 5. This isn't just a story about pigs. It's a war between the kingdom of darkness and the unstoppable power of Jesus Christ. Our story begins as Jesus and his disciples crossed the Sea of Galilee. This might seem like a simple boat trip, but it was actually a divine mission. They had just survived a violent storm on the water, a storm that Jesus stopped with just his words. Mark 4:39 tells us, "Then he arose and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, 'Peace, be still.' And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm." But why would Jesus brave a dangerous storm, cross a sea, and arrive in foreign territory? Because on the other side, there was a man in desperate need, a man no one else could help, a man living among the dead. Mark 5:2-3 describes the scene. "And when he had come out of the boat, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit, who had his dwelling among the tombs, and no one could bind him, not even with chains." Picture this moment. The instant Jesus steps on shore, he meets a terrifying figure, a wild-eyed, filthy man covered in scars, naked, bruised, bloody, with matted hair and broken chains hanging from his wrists, evidence of failed attempts to restrain him. Mark 5:4 continues, "Because he had often been bound with shackles and chains, and the chains had been pulled apart by him, and the shackles broken in pieces, neither could anyone tame him." This man wasn't just troubled, he was feared, so violent that people avoided the entire region, so disturbed that even iron restraints couldn't hold him. He wasn't just physically bound, he was spiritually imprisoned. Mark 5:5. "And always night and day he was in the mountains and in the tombs, crying out and cutting himself with stones. Every night his screams echoed off the rocks. Every day he wandered alone, wounded, weeping, bleeding." Can you imagine the hopelessness? Can you feel the despair? He had lost everything: his home, his family, his name, his mind. The tombs weren't just where he lived. They represented what he believed about himself. Dead, cursed, forgotten. But then Jesus came. Not by accident, not by chance. He crossed the sea on purpose to find the one man no one else would reach. Jesus didn't see a madman. He saw a son, a prisoner needing freedom, a soul worth saving. This moment reminds us that no one is too broken, too possessed, or too far gone for Jesus to reach. Whether you're trapped in addiction, imprisoned by shame, or lost in isolation, Jesus crosses storms to get to you, because that's who he is, the one who leaves the crowd for one soul. As Jesus steps onto the land of the Gerasenes, his feet barely touch the shore, when suddenly, from the tombs, the possessed man comes running. Wild-eyed and frantic, torn and tormented, he runs toward Jesus. But he doesn't attack. He doesn't flee. Instead, he falls at Jesus' feet. Mark 5:6-7. When he saw Jesus from afar, he ran and worshipped him. And he cried out with a loud voice and said, "What have I to do with you, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I implore you by God that you do not torment me." This wasn't the man speaking. This was the voice of the unclean spirits within him. Even in their torment, even in their rebellion, they recognized Jesus not as a teacher or miracle worker, but as the Son of the Most High God, the one with divine authority over heaven and earth. James 2:19 reminds us, even the demons believe and tremble. They weren't just startled, they were terrified. Why? Because when Jesus appears, the kingdom of darkness is exposed. His very presence is judgment to the wicked. What's striking is that the demons didn't deny who Jesus was. They didn't mock him. They didn't argue. They begged, "I implore you by God." Imagine that. Demons calling on God's name for mercy, pleading not to be punished before their time, because they know what awaits them, and they know Jesus has the power to send them there. Then Jesus speaks. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't threaten. Mark 5:8. For he said to him, "Come out of the man, unclean spirit." But instead of leaving immediately, the spirits resist. So Jesus does something powerful, something personal. He asks a question. Mark 5:9. Then he asked him, "What is your name?" The answer shakes the soul. Mark 5:9. And he answered, saying, "My name is Legion, for we are many." Legion. It's not a Hebrew name. It's Roman military terminology. A legion in the Roman army consisted of up to 6,000 soldiers. Organized, strategic, brutal. This wasn't one demon. This was an entire army of darkness camped within a single man. Can you imagine the torment? Thousands of spirits warring, speaking, battling for control inside one fragile soul. No wonder he cried out night and day. No wonder chains couldn't hold him. He wasn't dealing with mental illness alone. He was under siege. And yet, despite their number, despite their strength, despite their organized torment, all of them together trembled before the presence of one man, Jesus. The demons may have been many, but Jesus is matchless. The darkness was organized, but Jesus is sovereign. The forces within this man were countless, but they knew they were outmatched by the Word made flesh, the King of Glory, the commander of heaven's armies. This was not a fair fight. And friend, hear this truth. No matter how deep your darkness, no matter how many battles rage inside you, no matter what voices torment your soul, there is still one who can silence them all. His name is Jesus. Then comes one of the most unexpected and mysterious moments in all the Gospels. Jesus stands face to face with an army of unclean spirits, dark, ancient forces that had tormented this man day and night. He has given the command, "Come out." But instead of immediately fleeing, the spirits make a bizarre request. Mark 5:10-12. Also, he begged him earnestly that he would not send them out of the country. And all the demons begged him, saying, "Send us to the swine, that we may enter them." They begged, not once, not casually, but earnestly. These weren't casual whispers. This was desperate pleading. The same spirits who had made a man terrorize a region, breaking chains, crying out, cutting himself with stones, were now whimpering like prisoners before a judge. They had ruled over this man for what may have been years. But in the presence of Jesus they had no rights, no strength, no authority. All they could do was beg. and their request, "Send us to the pigs." Why pigs? Why not return to the shadows? Why not vanish into the wilderness? Surely they had better options than swine. But make no mistake, this wasn't random. This strange request shows us three shocking truths about the nature of demons. Luke's account of this story gives us an even clearer picture of their fear. Luke 8:31. And they begged him that he would not command them to go out into the abyss. This wasn't just about leaving the man. This was about avoiding a place far worse than exposure. They were terrified of the abyss. The Greek word is abyssos, literally meaning bottomless, or without depth. It refers to a cosmic prison, a dark, terrifying place of confinement, sealed and appointed by God. Not a metaphor, but a real spiritual location where evil spirits abound until their final judgment. Revelation 9:1-2 gives us a glimpse. And the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit, and he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of a great furnace. And the sun and the air were darkened, a spiritual prison so deep, so dark, so full of torment that smoke pours out when it's opened. This place isn't hell itself, but it's closely connected with demonic captivity. 2 Peter 2:4 echoes this. For if God did not spare the angels who sinned, but cast them down to hell and delivered them into chains of darkness, to be reserved for judgment. This is where some fallen angels, those who committed unspeakable sins in the days of Noah, Genesis 6, were locked away until the final judgment. And that's the very place the demons feared Jesus might send them. They didn't just fear being cast out of the man. They feared being locked away forever. They feared the judgment seat, the chains, the unbreakable prison prepared for them since their rebellion. And they knew Jesus had the authority to send them there immediately. This isn't superstition. It's not mythology. Even demons believe in their final judgment. They know who Jesus is. They know what awaits them, and they know he holds the key to their eternal confinement. The demons chose pigs because pigs were unclean. Leviticus 11:7. And the swine, though it divides the hoof and is cloven-footed, yet it does not chew the cud. It is unclean to you. According to the law of Moses, pigs were ritually defiled, unfit for sacrifice, unfit for eating, unfit for even touching. Pigs were a symbol of impurity, a living representation of all that was spiritually unclean and outside God's covenant. So when the demons begged Jesus to let them enter the swine, they weren't just looking for any host. They were looking for something that matched their nature. Think about it. They didn't beg to enter trees or birds or rivers. They didn't even ask to roam the wilderness like in other stories. They wanted pigs, defiled vessels, because the unclean is always drawn to the unclean. Wickedness moves toward what is already corrupt. Darkness thrives in places where God's presence is rejected. These spirits weren't just seeking refuge, they were seeking compatibility. They chose pigs because they were spiritually suitable. Just like sin seeks out a willing heart, these demons sought out vessels that already bore the mark of defilement. At last, Jesus grants their request. He doesn't argue. He doesn't struggle. He simply gives them permission. Mark 5:13. And at once, Jesus gave them leave. Then the unclean spirits went out and entered the swine, and the herd ran violently down a steep place into the sea and were choked in the sea. Just like that, a legion of demons leaves the man and enters a herd of pigs. Over 2,000 pigs, instantly driven mad, stampede down the slope, squealing, panicked, possessed. In seconds, the water swallows them whole. Mass death, mass confusion, mass destruction. What the people could not see inside the man, they now saw in plain sight. The torment, the chaos, the hatred, all of it was now unleashed through the pigs. The spiritual was made visible. The invisible evil that had ravaged one man's soul now showed itself in the violent death of an entire herd. This wasn't just coincidence. It was a demonstration. It exposed the true nature of demonic power. Destruction. Always destruction. Jesus said it clearly in John 10:10. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. That is the mission of the enemy. Not just to harass you, but to ruin you. To ruin your mind, your body, your family, your future, your very identity. If demons had their way, they would reduce every living soul to a screaming stampede headed off a cliff. Here's the terrifying truth. The pigs couldn't bear it. They had no will, no covenant, no protection. They simply received the spirits, and within seconds they ran to their deaths. Even animals preferred death over demon possession. The moment the unclean spirits entered them, their instinct was to end it, to hurl themselves off the edge, to silence the voices, to escape the torment. That's what evil does. It doesn't rest. It doesn't build. It doesn't improve. It devours. Think of the contrast. The man, when possessed, cried out, cut himself, and isolated himself in the tombs. But when delivered, he sat clothed and in his right mind. The pigs, when possessed, sprinted toward death with no turning back. This is the true face of the enemy. It may disguise itself as power, as pleasure, as freedom, but behind the mask is always the same agenda. Destruction. Friend, don't underestimate the darkness. Sin doesn't stay small. Compromise doesn't stay hidden. Evil doesn't stay tame. What seems manageable today may be racing you toward a cliff tomorrow. Proverbs 14:12. There is a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death. The unclean spirits were gone. The pigs had plunged to their death, and the man was finally free. Word spread like wildfire. The herdsmen, shaken and breathless, ran into the nearby city and countryside, reporting everything they had seen. Not just the loss of the pigs, but the miraculous change in the man they once feared. Mark 5:15. Then they came to Jesus and saw the one who had been demon-possessed and had the legion, sitting and clothed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Let that image settle. The man who once lived among tombs, who screamed into the night, who tore through chains and sliced his own skin, now sits calmly at the feet of Jesus. Clothed, composed, sane, restored. No more voices, no more torment, no more bondage. What years of isolation, fear, and restraint couldn't do, one encounter with Jesus accomplished in an instant. The one everyone avoided, the one no one could help, the one society had given up on. Jesus delivered him. This is what real freedom looks like. Not just a change of behavior, but a change of identity. From possessed to peaceful, from chained to seated, from lost to found. But here's the twist in the story. You'd think the townspeople would celebrate. You'd think they'd rejoice that the madman was now whole. But instead, they were afraid, not of the man anymore, but of Jesus. Mark 5:17. Then they began to plead with him to depart from their region. They didn't ask questions. They didn't seek understanding. They simply wanted him gone. Why? Because freedom has a cost. Their pigs, over 2,000 of them, were gone. That wasn't just livestock. It was their economy, their livelihood, their comfort zone. In delivering the man, Jesus disrupted their system. He flipped their priorities. He exposed their values. He showed that they'd rather tolerate demons than lose their possessions. They preferred predictable darkness over the disruptive presence of light. It's a sobering truth. Some people will reject Jesus not because they don't believe in him, but because they do. They recognize his power. They feel his authority. And they know if he stays, everything will have to change. Their business, their morals, their relationships, their comfort. So, instead of welcoming him, they ask him to leave. Not because he failed, but because he succeeded too well. The man in the tombs had nothing left to lose, so he received freedom. But the people in the town had too much to protect, so they rejected it. And still today, Jesus brings peace to the tormented and disruption to the comfortable. The question is, will we invite him in or send him away? The crowd was afraid. The townspeople pleaded for Jesus to leave, and the man, freed from a legion of demons, begged to go with him. After all, who could blame him? Jesus had rescued him from the abyss of torment, restored his sanity, returned his dignity. For the first time in perhaps years, he felt human again. All he wanted was to stay near the one who saved him, to follow this Savior, to never again be apart from the presence that had broken his chains. But Jesus says no, not because he didn't care, not because he didn't love him, but because he had a greater mission. Mark 5:19. But Jesus did not permit him, and said to him, "Go home to your friends, and tell them what great things the Lord has done for you, and how he has had mercy on you." Did you catch that? Jesus didn't just deliver him from darkness. He commissioned him into light. The man who had once terrorized his region was now being sent to testify in it. Notice the instruction. Go home to your friends, not to the synagogue, not to the temple courts, but to your people, the ones who saw you screaming in the tombs, the ones who heard the chains rattle at night, the ones who whispered rumors and crossed the street to avoid you. Go to them, because they won't just hear your story, they'll see your change. And no one can argue with a changed life. Jesus turned a man once filled with a legion of demons into a preacher of mercy, a voice of hope, a living testimony. He didn't hand him a scroll. He didn't ask him to memorize theology. He simply said, "Tell them what I did for you." And he did. Mark 5:20. And he departed and began to proclaim in Decapolis all that Jesus had done for him. And all marveled. The Decapolis, 10 Gentile cities in the region. This wasn't a quiet testimony to a neighbor. This man became the first missionary to the Gentile world, even before Paul, before Peter's vision, before the Great Commission was given to the disciples. Jesus sent this man, clothed, healed, and whole, into a land that had rejected him. And what happened? All marveled. His voice rang louder than their fear. His story lasted longer than the drowning pigs. And long after Jesus left their shores, the gospel remained through a man once broken beyond repair. Friend, this is your calling too. You may not have a pulpit. You may not have a degree. But you have a story. And Jesus says the same to you. Go home and tell them what the Lord has done for you. Because your testimony is a weapon. Revelation 12:11. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. You don't have to know everything. You just have to know what he did for you. And when you tell it, people will marvel. So what can we learn from this story? What does this dramatic encounter between Jesus, demons, pigs, and a tormented man have to do with us today? More than we realize, because behind the chaos, the screams, and the drowning herd are spiritual lessons we cannot afford to miss. Lesson 1. Demons are real. Let's be clear. Demons aren't fairy tales. They're not literary metaphors. They are real spiritual beings with real agendas and real fear of Jesus. Ephesians 6:12. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. We're not just dealing with bad habits or bad luck. We are in a spiritual war. But here's the good news. The demons in this story didn't laugh. They didn't boast. They begged, because when Jesus stands before them, they have no choice but to submit. Philippians 2:10, that at the name of Jesus every knee should bow, of those in heaven and of those on earth and of those under the earth. Lesson 2. Jesus came to deliver the bound. Never forget this. Jesus crossed a stormy sea for one man. He wasn't greeted by crowds. There was no offering waiting, no discipleship opportunity, just a screaming, scarred man in chains living among tombs. And yet Jesus came, because he leaves the 99 to rescue the one. Luke 15:4. No soul is too lost, no situation too dark, no place too far gone. You may feel forgotten, overlooked, unworthy. But if he crossed the sea for that man, he'll come for you too. Lesson 3. Freedom often looks messy. We love the idea of deliverance until it disrupts our comfort. Jesus brought freedom to one man, but it cost a community over 2,000 pigs. Freedom is beautiful, but it's not always clean. It may cost us friends, finances, reputation, routine. Sometimes when Jesus steps in, he overturns our entire system, because you can't invite the light and keep your shadows. So ask yourself, are you willing to let him remove the very things you've been clinging to, even if they've become part of your income, your identity, your normal? Because real freedom always costs something. Lesson 4. Don't send Jesus away. Perhaps the saddest part of this story isn't the man's torment, but the town's response. They saw his power, they witnessed his mercy, and they begged him to leave. Mark 5:17. Then they began to plead with him to depart from their region. Why? Because they feared what else he might change, what else he might expose. They preferred pigs over people, profit over presence, familiarity over freedom. And so they told the Son of God to leave their shores. Still today, many do the same. Jesus shows up, and instead of welcoming him, we resist. Because deep down, we know if he stays, something has to go. But here's the truth. The cost of keeping your demons is always higher than the cost of losing your pigs. Lesson 5. Your testimony matters. The man Jesus delivered didn't enroll in seminary. He didn't memorize the Torah. He wasn't trained in apologetics. But he had a story. And Jesus said, "Go tell them what the Lord has done for you." Mark 5:19. That was enough, and it still is. Revelation 12:11. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. Your testimony isn't just a story. It's a weapon. You may think, "I'm not qualified." But what qualifies you is what He did in you. Someone out there doesn't need your perfect theology. They need your scars, your redemption, your miracle. Tell them what He's done. Because when people see who you were and who you are now, they will marvel. Mark 5:20. Let's pause right here and ask a simple, honest question. Are there areas in your life where you've let darkness dwell? Maybe it's a secret habit, a deep wound, a voice of condemnation that just won't stop echoing in your mind. Maybe you feel tormented emotionally, mentally, spiritually, chained by shame, haunted by failure, paralyzed by fear. Maybe, like the man in the tombs, you've learned to live with the chaos. You've gotten used to the tombs. You've accepted the voices. You've believed the lie that this is just who you are now. But friend, listen to this. There is no demon too strong, no pit too deep, no scar too permanent, no past too dark that Jesus cannot redeem. The same Jesus who crossed the sea, who silenced a legion, who clothed a man in his right mind, is here right now for you. John 8:36. If the Son makes you free, you shall be free indeed. That's not a wish. That's a promise. You don't need a perfect prayer. You don't need to fix yourself first. Just call on His name. Romans 10:13. For whoever calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved. Right now, this moment, open your heart. Let Him enter your storm. Let Him break your chains. Let Him drive out the darkness that's been squatting in your soul. You were never meant to live among tombs. You were made for freedom, for peace, for purpose. And when Jesus sets you free, really free, don't keep it to yourself. Go tell someone, because your story might just be the key to someone else's deliverance. This story isn't just about pigs or demons or tombs. It's about you. The freedom you need, the Savior who comes, the life He restores, and the mission He gives. So, don't silence your story. Don't send Him away. Let Him cross the sea for you, and then go tell the world what He's done.